Also, he had stabbed me in my back of my left lung, which you can see in the video, the blood start to soak through my shirt. At that point, I still didn't even know I'd been stabbed. I thought it was just a really hard punch. But then I saw the knife in his hand, so I decided, well, I can't continue. I tried to run to the driver, hoping that he would open the door, let me in. Maybe he had seen what was happening on the cameras. Clearly Moses is criminally insane, right? I mean, at this point, he is what he is, and it doesn't look like he's ever going to change.
David Menzies for Rebel News here in Toronto. And folks, I'm standing near North York Centre subway station. This was the beginning of a shocking story. It shocked the entire city. It shocked the world thanks to a video going viral. I am with the victim depicted in that video. That would be Derek Dykoff. And before we get into his story and show you the now viral footage, I want to ask a favor of you. Can you please go to our new website, fixourcities.com. That's fixourcities.com. So many wonderful cities in our great dominion are just devolving into hellholes, and we have to take a stand. Please go to fixourcities.com, sign the petition, and if you're able to, kindly make a small donation. Now, before I get into the nitty-gritty with what happened to Derek last month, let's throw to that now viral YouTube video. I caution you, it is very disturbing, it is very violent, it is disgraceful, but check out the video evidence of what happened to Derek on a TTC subway car that day. Now, Derek, first of all, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us. Before we get into deconstructing that incident, I want to ask you, you were just released from hospital a few days ago. I see the extent of your injuries. How is your recovery coming?
Well, I'm happy to be alive. I mean, I'm in a bit of pain. I'm not really on any pain meds. I'm not really much of a pill guy. Everything is pretty much feeling good around. My lungs are good. But this is going to be a while to heal. The severed nerve in my pinky and ring finger.
And that's important because you are a construction worker, you are a musician. You need your arms and hands to be in top function, don't you?
Oh, no, absolutely. I'm also an amateur arm wrestler. I mean, my hands are my life, and yeah, without this, I can't do what I love and I can't make a living.
Now, let's go back to analyzing the video we just took a look at. I know there must have been some storyline leading up to the point where you throw that punch at the assailant. Can you tell us what happened just before the video begins?
Yep, so I entered the subway here at North York Center. I was on my way to the beach. He got on at Lawrence Station. I was facing the front of the train, so I saw him walk on to my left, and he looked up and down, looked me right in the eyes, and started to walk right towards me. He was playing rap music on his cell phone, holding it right to his ear at full blast. It was quite a loud phone, very trebly and annoying, and he sat right behind me, and it was playing right in my ear. So I just turned and I said, hey man, do you mind turning that off? You're not supposed to be playing that on the subway, and I don't think the people around really appreciate it. And he ignored me at first, so I asked him again, and he basically said, I can't hear you. So I said, well, maybe if you turned it down, you could, right? I'm just trying to have a dialogue with him. I can tell he's being, trying to be a tough guy. I felt like he was trying to antagonize me right off the bat, just for the sake that he met eyes with me as he walked up and then sat directly behind me. So I just went on to ask him again, look, buddy, there's rules against this stuff on the train. You're not supposed to be playing it. Would you turn it off? And he looked at me and he said, suck your mom. My mom actually just passed away in May, on May 21st. She was my last surviving close family member. It was really hard for me, and I had just finished taking care of all the stuff in terms of cremation and clearing out her apartment. It was one of my first days. I finally had some freedom, actually. July 4th is when I had finished with all those things, and this occurred on July 6th. So that really that hit me hard, and I said to him, what? And he repeated it. And the both times he said it, he just gave me the biggest, most sinister grin you've ever seen.
Can you explain why you found it necessary to slug him?
So after he said suck your mom twice, I knew, wow, this guy's really trying to instigate a fight here. I didn't feel safe. And so I stood up to take a look at him, and as I looked, his hands were reaching into his pockets. So at that point I decided, do I let him pull out whatever he's got? Who knows if it was a gun or a knife or whatever, or do I start trying to defend myself before I get injured? So I did. I threw the first punches, and at first he pulled his hands out and didn't have a knife in his hand, so I thought he was bluffing. He has no knife, so I gave him some space so we could have a fair fight. And sure enough, that's when he pulled out the knife.
Wow. Is that a regrettable moment in the incident, the fact that you backed off, allowing him to arm himself?
Absolutely. I should have just stayed on him. The whole thing is the Canadian law system is atrocious when it comes to self-defense or anything like that. So, I have knockout power, but I didn't want to use it because what if I killed him, right? I don't want to go to jail. So I was kind of just trying to pepper him until the train would come to the next station and I could run out.
And Derek, the fight turns from a fist fight into a knife fight, although you're not armed with a knife, and he stabs you several times. What were the extent of those stabbing injuries?
One of the first ones I got, probably during throwing a punch, he must have raised the knife, and he cut my forearm really deep. I'd say it was about 2 inches deep, 2 inches wide. I could see right through my forearm to the ground. It was a gaping wound. He severed my nerve in my forearm, so once I saw that, I knew I can't continue fighting. Also, he had stabbed me in my back of my left lung, which you can see in the video, the blood start to soak through my shirt. At that point, I still didn't even know I'd been stabbed. I thought it was just a really hard punch. But then I saw the knife in his hand, so I decided, well, I can't continue. I tried to run to the driver, hoping that he would open the door, let me in. Maybe he had seen what was happening on the cameras. But he was right on my ass, so I understand why the driver didn't open it for his own safety's sake. And when he caught up, he had stabbed me several more times, and I just remember looking at my left rib, and there was 2 stab wounds, and blood was just pouring out like a fountain. So I had to beg for somebody to put pressure on my wound. There was one gentleman, looked to be a white male, brown hair, about my age. I'm 37. And he was quite hesitant. He was like, I don't know what to do. And I just said, put pressure. He's like, I don't have anything. I actually had to take off my own t-shirt while I'm bleeding out, give it to him. And he wasn't really putting pressure at all. And I'm like, harder, right? And then at that point, I started to go to the ground. I didn't know, but I actually had 2 collapsed lungs.
Oh.
Because he punctured both my lungs. So I was just on the ground trying to breathe for my life, and I felt so dehydrated. You wouldn't believe how dehydrated you get when you lose that much blood. Worst dehydration feeling you could imagine, and I started to beg for water. Someone did come with a bottle of Aquafina and poured out water, and I was able to stick my tongue out and just get it was the sweetest taste in the world.
And meanwhile, Moses is casually walking off the subway train at the next stop.
With my backpack.
Insult to injury. He stole your backpack.
Yeah, so after he stabbed me, I'm sure he thought I was going to die with all the blood pouring out of me. So once he figured he finished me off, he walked back casually, took my bag, and walked off the train with it.
And I can't state this any more vehemently, Derek. This is a career criminal, as I understand it, out on bail. He was supposed to be on that very day going to Milton for a court hearing. Obviously, he had no intention on doing that. Why is a reprobate like him a free man in the first place?
Well, obviously he doesn't take our legal system seriously. I mean, he's clearly gotten away with potentially murder a million times before, and he feels very comfortable going out in broad daylight. I mean, this was at noon hour on a train with tons of witnesses, tons of cameras, and he has no regard at all for anything.
Despicable. I think you're right, by the way. Now, I guess the paramedics show up finally, and tell us what happens then.
Yeah, so as I'm on the ground bleeding out, some woman came who said she was a doctor or a nurse. She's like, well, you're going to be okay? What's your name? I could barely answer her questions. Okay. But I did, just to let her know I'm not dead and I'm still coherent. And she basically just comforted me, saying paramedics are on the way. The driver also came out and said paramedics are on the way. And every breath in was the hardest thing I've ever done. And I just continued to fight to breathe, and paramedics showed up just in time.
You're rushed to Sunnybrook Hospital, and at the hospital, you are essentially re-victimized. What happened there?
I had to fight for my life in the hospital, actually. I mean, I got to thank the paramedics and the hospital for saving me, because they did. But there were certain nurses there expressing their opinions that I was the one in the wrong. I had attacked this guy for no reason, and he defended himself with a knife. I had a nurse, Michelle's actually her name, a blonde with glasses, white, quite slim, maybe about my age, and she was outside my room as I'm, coming to, explaining to another colleague how, so basically he just started beating up on this guy for no reason, and he had to pull out a knife to defend himself, and a lot of them there were against me, you could tell. I mean, the first time I woke up in the hospital I was being choked by a suction tube, because they put the tube down your lungs to breathe, and then they put a suction tube in your mouth. So they had placed that tube right on the back of my throat. And that's what had woke me up, is that I couldn't breathe. And I woke up saying, I can't breathe, you gotta move it, you gotta move it. And I was about to die. And they're saying, no, it's fine, whatever. And I had 6, surgeons, nurses holding me down. And I had to rip up out of all of their grips and pull it right out of my mouth. One of the things was I don't eat microwave food, right? The first day I was there, they gave me a meal with fish. And my friend had said how that fish looks kind of fishy. Probably don't want to eat that. So I said, hey, can I get the veggie meals from now on? They said, sure. I didn't know the veggie meals are outsourced. They explained to me later. So they're all microwaved, right? I don't eat out of a microwave. So I kept turning the food away. So they sent psych people to talk to me. One of their questions was, do you think we're trying to poison you here in the food? And I'm like, no, it's just gross. And then they're like, they asked me a few more questions, because people... essentially in the hospital, when you pull a tube out, they give you an observer to watch you, because they think that you're going to jeopardize your own process, right? But after 3 days, and I didn't have any more incidences like that, they took my observer away. And then weird things would happen to me in the middle of the night. Like the room that they put me in to recover in was the nurses would come and tell me, this is the stuffiest, hottest room in the hospital. No one with lung injuries should be in here. They also had me in there with a roommate who was 95 and deaf. So he yelled when he spoke, and everyone yelled at him, and they were with him all in the middle of the night, so I couldn't sleep. And that's another question the psych ward had for me, or the psychiatrics there had for me, was that, why aren't I sleeping? They think I'm paranoid, schizophrenic, or something, I can't sleep. I'm like, no, I've got people yelling in my room all day and night. There was also another patient there, poor guy suffered a brain injury, so he's yelling at the top of his lungs all night. There was no rest. Yeah, so police actually came in the next day that I was conscious and awake, and this nice officer came in. I can't remember his name, but he basically explained to me that there was a bit of a foot pursuit. They had located him the next day, and he ran and made them chase him, and they tackled him down real good and caught him, and now he's in jail.
Sadly, it's not news that the TTC is a very dangerous venue these days in Toronto. We've even had murders on the TTC. Briefly, law enforcement made a presence. They came and they went. I guess it's a budgetary issue. What would you like to see happen, Derek, moving forward? I mean, is it too much to ask that at least one or two trained security personnel are on subway cars to ensure the safety of people who are just minding their own business and commuting?
No, it's not too much to ask at all. I mean, I'm actually an ex-TTC busker. I used to play guitar in the subways for a living, so I know their security system. They had about 10 guards back then. It's explained to me by one of the head constables at the time. Bill was his name. I don't know if he's retired now, but yeah, I mean, you go on a streetcar on any given day, they'll have up to 3 fare inspectors on there, so TTC will pay them to cover their own revenues, but they can't afford to put one security guard on each train. I mean, it is atrocious and disgusting.
You have a theory that back in the wintertime, you two had an accidental bumping into one another, and he maybe recognized you, and that's why he was trying to instigate something?
Absolutely, it wasn't an accidental bump in at all. He intentionally shoulder checked me. I was actually on Delaware Avenue near Ossington and College, and I was going to check an apartment out. I'm not usually in that neighborhood. It was winter time, the sidewalks were plowed, there wasn't much room on the sidewalk. I moved to the right as far as I could as he was approaching. Again, holding the same cell phone right up to his ear, blasting gangster rap, same black frame glasses, same guy, it was the same guy. So he stayed dead center in the sidewalk, and I knew he wanted to shoulder check me. I couldn't move over any further, so I said, I'm game, right? So boom, we check shoulders. I turn around, I say, buddy, what's your problem? You walk on that side, I walk on this side. Like, do you want to go or something? What's your problem? And all he did was just smile at me with that same sinister smile. Just a big cheeky grin.
Who are you most upset with? This career criminal who almost killed you, or I guess the justice system taking its direction from the Justin Trudeau Liberals to grant parole, grant bail to some of the most heinous criminals out there? Where does most of your anger reside right now?
Clearly Moses is criminally insane, right? I mean, at this point, he is what he is, and it doesn't look like he's ever going to change. It is up to the legal system to keep the public safe and make sure that these people are off the streets, and they have failed miserably at that, and definitely my resentment and my anger is towards the system.
I'm sure you've reflected on this. If you had to live that day over again, what would you do differently?
Well, I mean, I'm not much of a person who likes to back down from people who are trying to cause confrontation with me. But unfortunately, when you're on a subway car, you're trapped, right? Yeah. That's one of the longest stops between Lawrence and Eglinton on the subway. Yeah. Looking back, of course, it would have been better to just get up and leave. But the situation was that there was a lot of women around, and they looked very uncomfortable and nervous about him being there too. Yeah. And I just didn't feel like much of a man if I were to get up and abandon him there with this psycho criminal basically taunting everybody.
Yeah. And Derek, has anyone with the City of Toronto reached out to you? Has anyone with the Toronto Transit Commission reached out to you?
Nobody.
To me, that's appalling. And I guess it's all about liability. They're probably worried you're going to commence legal action. And that's my next question. Are you pondering that?
Of course I am. I need to get anything I can get out of this at this point because I don't know when or if I'll ever be able to work again. I mean, my friends have set up a GoFundMe for me, and it's been going pretty well. That won't last forever, and any compensation I can get for what's happened here, I'm going to pursue. I mean, I did take the TTC the first day I was out of hospital. I went to the beach, tried to enjoy my life. I had a friend with me, so it made me feel a little more comforted. But I don't ever want to take the TTC again. I think as few people should take it as possible until they do something about taking care of their passengers. I mean, they're more worried about their profits than they are their patrons. And it just goes to show, why protect the peasants when we can put a few extra shekels in our pocket? I'm just really thankful to be here. I want to thank God for giving me the strength to survive that. I don't think I would have done it with some meditation training that I've received as well from this Gnostic meditation group. I really owe them. I don't think my lungs would have been strong enough to endure double punctures if I hadn't had that type of training. So I just strongly recommend people get into meditation. It's a real exercise. It's very difficult. Trying to relax your body while doing deep breathing, it's one of the hardest things you could ever try to do. So I really owe a lot of what helped me survive that day to that.
Derek, I wish you well. I'm sure all our viewers wish you well. Godspeed on your recovery. And, please stay in touch with us. Tell us how you're making out, both with your recovery, with your financial situation. What happened to you was egregious and outrageous. It should never have happened. This guy should have been behind bars from the get-go, but we've got a hug-a-thug mentality. This is outrageous. Derek, good luck in the months and years ahead.
Thanks a lot, David. Appreciate it.
Folks, it's a sad state of affairs in Canada, isn't it? We are seeing San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, those types of Democrat-run cities moving north. And the result, well, we have hellholes existing in our great dominion. We got to put an end to this. We got to reclaim our cities. So go to fixourcities.com. That's fixourcities.com. Sign our petition, and if you're able to, make a donation so that we can continue to bring you this kind of journalism.